And we start here with President Trump ramping up his attacks on the media overnight.
In a late-night tweet, the president saying, quote, "Fake news media knowingly doesn't tell the truth, a great danger to our country."
Yeah, this came just hours after the president spoke to a group of conservative activists saying reporters should not be allowed to quote anonymous sources.
But this morning, the Washington Post reporting the Trump administration recruited members of the intelligence community to counter stories about Trump associates, ties to Russia, and that some of those officials spoke to reporters anonymously.
All this is happening as the Democrats gather in Atlanta to elect a new party chair. They're really trying to chart a course forward in the age of Trump. Many angles to cover this morning, and we kick it all off with ABC's David Curley, who's at the White House. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, Dan. You're right. Overnight, the war of words between the president and his White House and the attacks on the media continued. And underlying all of this are the investigations of possible contacts between the Trump campaign and Russian officials.
Facing stories and investigations about alleged ties to Russia, this morning President Trump and his White House are again targeting journalists.
I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people. Because they have no sources, they just make them up.
The president apparently talking about a New York Times story saying his campaign had numerous contacts with Russian intelligence.
I'm against the people that make up stories and make up sources. They shouldn't be allowed to use sources unless they use somebody's name.
A White House source, ironically requiring anonymity, says the chief of staff was told by an FBI official that the story was not true. But when Reince Priebus asked the FBI to say so publicly, the Bureau declined. And the president questioned the Bureau in tweets, saying the FBI is totally unable to stop the national security leakers. They can't even find the leakers within the FBI itself. And this morning, a Washington Post report saying the Trump administration reportedly tried to enlist other politicians to quiet the Russian stories. The president set aside that controversy to bask in the bright lights of CPAC, having co-opted much of the conservative movement, which did not warm to him until the election.
The core conviction of our movement is that we are a nation that put and will put its own citizens first.
But more conflict just hours later. After the president signs an executive order to study reducing regulation, the press secretary held an off-camera briefing in his office, but left some major news outlets out, which our Cecilia Vega asked Sean Spicer about.
When you look at those other outlets because, Cecilia, there's 3,000 people that are credentialed to come in here.
But there are 6.
Okay. Oh, no, there's not 6. There's actually, no, actually that is false. To say that there are 6, maybe 6 that reached out to you.
Among the outlets excluded from that briefing, the New York Times. The president has nothing on his schedule today. A grand ball is planned for Sunday evening with governors from around the country. Dan and Paula?
David, thank you. And we've got a powerhouse pair of ABC News political analysts this morning, Cokie Roberts in Washington and Matthew Dowd, who's in Austin, Texas. Good morning to both of you. Cokie, let me start with you. We're watching the Trump administration really escalate the attacks on the media. So what's the strategy here, and is it likely to work?
Well, it works with the people who love Donald Trump and hate the media, and that's an awful lot of Americans. The fact is that it puts the media in a difficult situation because every day we're forced to say, here's what he said that isn't true. And then people say, well, he says that's fake news, and then people start to say, well, who is right here? And that becomes very difficult.
Matt, do you think this is a winning strategy?
I think in the short term it helps them because it undermines the press and undermines anybody that tries to have some factual dispute with him. Donald Trump, for the last 2 years, has to have somebody to post up against. He had it with the Republicans when he ran in the primary. He had it with Hillary Clinton, and now he wants to create it with the press. He does not want to stand unto himself because he doesn't want that kind of introspection on him.
Okay, guys, let's shift gears. Let's talk about Russia, because Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said recently that it's highly likely that an investigation will be launched, a bipartisan investigation. We know these probes are intensifying, but the White House says that any insinuation about possible contacts between Trump associates and Russia, it's a witch hunt. What's your view?
Well, an investigation obviously will be launched. What's unsettling, to put it mildly, about the stories today are that one of the people or two of the people enlisted by the White House to try to knock down the stories are the heads, the Republican heads of the Senate and House Intelligence Committees. And those would be the bodies doing the investigations, unless they set up a separate commission, which they've said they don't want to do, that they want the intelligence committees to do the investigation. Well, if the White House already has the chairs saying there's no story here, what kind of investigation does that become?
Matt?
Well, in the land of Oz, sometimes you do find a witch in a witch hunt. And I think in this has been a cloud hanging over Donald Trump for his entirety of his campaign. And obviously we know that from our intelligence agencies, Russia was involved in hacking into our election, in releasing information that affected our election in some way. Donald Trump and his people, there's relationships that exist there. So the Senate and the House need to investigate this, and we'll see over time what all is involved.
Finally, the Democrats gathered today to elect a new party chair. Hillary Clinton's been cheering them on from the sidelines in a slick new video that was released yesterday. It seems like the choice the party faces right now is whether to go into all-out war mode with Trump, or as many activists are demanding, or whether to find areas where they can cooperate. So Koki, let me start with you. What's the better strategy for the Democrats?
I don't think they have a whole lot of choice here. I think that the Republicans said all through the campaign, nothing brings you together like winning, which we saw yesterday with Trump at CPAC. Nothing divides you more than losing, and that's where the Democrats are. They're very divided, everybody blaming everybody else for their loss. But the grassroots have taken over and want to be active. It's instructive that the person that the leaders of the party have chosen to respond to the president on Tuesday is the former governor of Kentucky, Beshear, who is very much a moderate. I'm not sure how that's going to play with the Democratic base.
And Matt, do you want to follow up on that?
Sure. I think the Democrats would be much better positioned. Yes, create a resistance to whatever they don't like, but be thoughtful about it. But in the end, the problem for them isn't Donald Trump and the Republicans. The problem for them is their brand, is their own brand and their own candidates that don't seem to have a capacity to connect with the American public, and especially in those industrial Midwest states. And electing a chairperson in this is a little bit like saying that's going to solve their problem, is a little bit like saying the head of marketing is the reason why the Cubs won. Well, it wasn't the reason why the Cubs won. The Cubs won because they had better players. Democrats need to get better players.
Perfect way to end this with a classic Matthew Dowd analogy. Matt Dowd and Koki Roberts.
Sports.
That's right, and I don't even know much about sports, and I got that one. Thank you very much, both of you. We really appreciate it.
All you need to know is that the Cubs won the World Series.
Yes, I do know that.
All right, Koki and Matt, thank you.